His story will be told from the perspective of the main female character. My sister Chloe lifted her wine glass. "It's so obvious," she commented. "So, where are your kids and husband?" She then scoffed. "Oh, wait. You still don't have them." The sound that came next was low, but it stung me deeply. Mom and Dad both smiled, acting as if the joke was innocent. My dinner fork hung still above my plate. I realized I had spent years covering their expenses and preventing foreclosure on their house. Yet, I was the target of their cruel humor right here at their own kitchen table. I placed my spoon flat on the surface, meeting my sister's gaze directly. I asked her, "Where exactly is your income?" Then I provided the answer myself. "Right, I have been paying for your life, but that ends now." The room immediately went quiet. This stillness was not peace. It was the start of total conflict. The actions they took later were unforgivable for any relative. Before I continue and explain what resulted from that quiet moment, tell me where you are right now. I need to know others have been mocked by their own relatives. Once you hear the full story, I want to know your reaction. What choice would you have made while sitting there? I am Olivia, 34 years old. I work as a UX researcher living in Boston's South End. To an outsider, my existence seems totally organized, a nice apartment, reliable employment, peaceful starts to the day. However, most people do not know where 50% of my salary goes. It vanishes into the financial void that my family represents. My mother, Carol, had to retire early from nursing after undergoing heart surgery. My father, Robert, previously taught economics, but then switched to consulting. This mostly meant he waited for business calls that never arrived. Then there is my sister, Chloe, who is 29. She is appealing, smart, and constantly showered with affection. She claims to be a fashion influencer, but her main influence is draining my savings. Money for car fixes, rent, and credit card payments. Her requests via text message always begin the same. "Hey sis, can you just cover this one time?" I convinced myself that this was the duty of a decent child, ensuring the house wasn't seized, paying the utility bills, and preventing the family structure from collapsing. I believe my constant generosity would eventually make them view me as more than just an emergency fund. Every Sunday, I drive 1 hour south to Providence, Rhode Island for dinner. My mother strictly enforces this ritual. It involves mashed potatoes, roast chicken, and something sweet to finish. The house still smells exactly the same, a mix of old coffee and wood furniture polish. The framed pictures on the walls are also unchanged. There's Chloe wearing a white dress from her high school pageant, Dad shaking hands with a seemingly important person, and Mom smiling in her hospital uniform. There is never a single picture of just me. I am always standing on the edge, partially cut out. I was the reliable one who always got there late because I had to finish work first. I never complain. I bring wine, help with the cleanup, and ask about their week. They mostly discuss Chloe's newest promotional deal, Dad's potential major client, or how expensive Mom's prescriptions have become. When the dinner is over, Dad always pats my shoulder like a business associate, not his daughter, and says, "Thanks for keeping everything running smoothly." Some evenings driving back toward Boston, I try to rationalize it. I tell myself, families are simply like this, messy, demanding, and flawed. On other nights, I grip the steering wheel until my hands hurt. Deep down, I know the reason I pay their expenses is not love. It's the profound sense of guilt they instilled in me since childhood. That's why I didn't foresee last Sunday's dinner turning disastrous. I expected the usual polite smiles hiding underlying tension. Instead, the atmosphere felt charged and sharp, as if something was about to happen. Even the sound of the silverware seemed too loud. The dining table looked normal that Sunday. Rolls in a basket, steam rising from the chicken, and wine glasses reflecting the orange light. Yet the usual warmth felt fake and strained. Mom talked about Chloe's invitation to a downtown Boston designer party. Dad commented on the excellent exposure and how proud we should be. I forced a smile and said the expected things, but my chest felt constricted. Exposure doesn't cover rent. Pride doesn't erase the tens of thousands I'd wired to save my sister's credit rating. Chloe was leaning back, staring at her phone, barely listening. Her sharp, dismissive laugh cut through my silence. "You know, Olivia, you really should attend one of these events. Maybe then you might finally meet somebody." She glanced up, giving me a smile that never reached her eyes. Where's that husband and kids of yours anyway? Oh, right. You don't have them. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Mom let out a small high-pitched laugh, the kind she uses to smooth things over. But this time it held a note of agreement. Dad chuckled too, shaking his head. Don't tease your sister, he said softly, but a slight smirk lingered on his face. My focus narrowed immediately. The smell of garlic, the clock ticking, the metal clinking, it all blended into a low noise. I had given up holidays, skipped vacations, and paid their debts. And this is all they saw. A person who was incomplete, a woman defined only by what she lacked. Chloe swirled her drink, her eyes sharp. I mean, you're fine, right? That tech job of yours. What exactly is it you do again? Screens and surveys. Her voice was sickly sweet and malicious. I just think you'd be much happier if you had something more than just spreadsheets in your life. My hand tightened around the spoon. I could feel the heat rising up my neck. I had tolerated the constant insults, the quiet demands, and the poor jokes for years. But something small yet final snapped inside me. I put my spoon down and looked directly at her. My voice sounded steady, almost unnervingly calm. Where did your cash go, Chloe? I questioned. Oh, that's right. I've been covering you until this very moment. The words hung between us like broken glass. The laughter abruptly stopped. My mother's hand froze near her mouth. Dad rapidly glanced back and forth, unsure if he should intervene or remain silent. My sister blinked, completely surprised. Excuse me, she asked. You heard me, I replied softly. I'm done with this. For the first time in years, I was not interrupted. The only noise was the kitchen wall clock ticking. That absolute silence was not reconciliation. It was the sound of a major break. That night, driving back to Boston, the silence in my vehicle was far heavier than their stares. The road ahead was just a long tube of headlights and rain. My reflection in the window seemed unfamiliar, calm on the surface, but underneath something decisive had finally awakened. I did not cry. I did not replay their insults. I focused only on my actions. Every wire transfer, every payment, every sacrifice that had purchased their peace while shrinking my own life. By the time I reached the South End, I knew going back was impossible. Inside my flat, kicked off my shoes and went straight to my desk. The stack of financial documents was still there. Receipts, payment notices, and bills. I had never had the courage to calculate the total damage. I turned on my PC and opened the banking portal. It showed line after line spanning many years. The money I spent covered my sister's college costs, Dad's mortgage, prescription fees for Mom, car repairs, and even the new sofa. Over $95,000 in 7 years. My breathing tightened. I had spent the most productive years of my life trying to keep everyone else afloat. The irony was stark. I'd built financial software tools to help people manage their savings. Yet, I couldn't stop my own money from draining away. That evening, I hovered over the button for the automated transfers I had set up for my parents. The system asked, "Are you certain you wish to cancel this recurring transfer?" I clicked confirm. It was a single click, but it felt like cutting a heavy rope that had been tightening around my neck for years. I leaned back, exhaling what felt like my first real breath in ages. The next morning, my phone started vibrating before my coffee was ready. Mom called first. "Sweetheart, did something go wrong?" "The house payment didn't go through." Then Dad texted, "You missed the transfer for the house." Then Chloe, "Hey, can you Venmo me? Rent is due." I read every single message, every phrase loaded with guilt, and placed the phone face down. By the end of the day, I had voicemails. Mom sounded terrified. Dad was angry. My sister's messages were a mix of pleading and accusations. By the end of the week, the calls had turned desperate. "You can't abandon your family. You owe us after everything we did. You are overreacting." I ignored all of them. Instead, I started gathering all documentation. The bank records, messages, and receipts. I wasn't doing it out of spite, but because an inner voice told me that the fight was far from finished. Then came a text message that proved my suspicion. "Come to the house Sunday. We must discuss this." No pleasantries, no question, just a command. I stared at the screen until it went dark. My heart rate slowed. If they truly wanted a conflict, I would stop pretending I wasn't prepared to fight. "Fine," I told myself softly. "Let's talk." Sunday arrived cold and overcast. The drive to Providence felt entirely different this time. No lingering guilt, no need to rehearse gentle replies, only a strong, deliberate sense of calm. I pulled up to the house, the one I had saved from seizure for years. The porch light was still unreliable. The paint was peeling, and the same drapes hung in the windows. Nothing looked changed. However, everything had. When I stepped inside, the air was thick with tension and the smell of coffee. My mother was laying the table, her movements sharp, refusing to look at me. Dad sat at the head, looking like a stern judge, hands clasped tightly. "Olivia," Mom said without glancing up, "we cannot live like this. The bills, the mortgage. You know how difficult our financial situation is." I hung my jacket over a chair. "I know. I've known for 7 years." Dad's voice was sharp. "Don't start that. This family relies on you, and you've always helped. Why stop suddenly?" I held his gaze. "Because it isn't help when it's just expected. That is called obligation." Mom dropped the napkin she was folding. "You are being terrible." "No," I replied softly. "I am being truthful." Chloe snorted, still focused on her phone. "Wow, someone finally grew a spine. Congratulations, sis." I turned toward her. "You know what is truly ironic? You mock me for being single and childless, yet you've lived off me like I'm your second parent." She snapped her head up. "Excuse me." Mom rushed and flustered. "That's enough, both of you. You can't expect her to be as responsible as you, Olivia." My laugh was dry. "That is precisely the root of the problem. You never required her to be." Dad slammed his hand on the table. The sound was sharp like glass breaking. "Watch your tone. We are your parents. You must show respect." I met his fierce glare, calm and steady. Respect is earned, not demanded. He leaned up slightly, trying to dominate the space, but I didn't move. For a moment, complete silence reigned. The tension felt so heavy the very air might fracture. Then Chloe spoke again, her voice laced with poison. "You think you're superior because you have a bit of money. Honestly, without us, you have nobody." I took a deep breath. "That is the key difference, Chloe. You need people to define who you are. I do not." Her face twisted. "You are pathetic. You will die alone with your boring spreadsheets." I offered a slight smile. "Maybe, but I will at least die without debt." Mom gasped. Dad mumbled something, and Chloe stormed toward me. "You are so utterly selfish." Before she could finish, I took a thick folder from my bag. The sound of the papers hitting the table stopped her mid-sentence. "What is that?" Dad demanded. "Records." I stated. "Every payment I have made for this family since starting work. Over $95,000. College, mortgage, repairs, credit cards, even the sofa you are sitting on right now." Chloe rolled her eyes. "You're actually keeping track." "No," I said evenly. "I am keeping proof." Mom's voice shook. "Olivia, this is unnecessary." "It is necessary," I cut in. "Because what occurred after last week's dinner was not merely a misunderstanding." Dad frowned. "What are you implying?" I slid another page toward him, a printed notice bearing his signature. "This is the home equity loan you secured using my full name." He stared at it, the color draining from his face. "That is outrageous." "Is it?" "The bank disagrees," I responded. I pulled out another page stamped with an official seal. "Forgery, identity fraud, and possibly elder fraud, depending on how far I choose to pursue this." Chloe froze, her eyes quickly moving between us. "You contacted the bank." "I did more than just call," I stated. "I hired an attorney. She is handling this case now." Mom's hand flew to her chest. "You brought an outsider to turn against your own relatives." I looked directly at her. "You ceased being my family when you treated me like a bank account. You crossed an absolute boundary when you signed my name without permission." Dad leaned forward, his voice low. "You think you can actually threaten us?" I didn't flinch. "It is not a threat. It's a deadline. You have 30 days to remove my name from every account and repay the money you owe. If you fail, Sarah will file the charges." The room went completely silent. The clock ticking on the wall sounded deafening. Chloe whispered, "You wouldn't actually do this." "Try me." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mom's tears began. Soft, well practiced. "Sweetheart, we only did it to save the house. You know your father has been having trouble. You thought I would fix it again." I interrupted. "You didn't think you counted on it." Dad's face hardened. "We are your parents." "And I was your insurance policy," I replied. "Not anymore." Chloe sank into her seat, her eyes glazed over. You are destroying our lives. I gather the folder into my arms. No, Chloe. I am simply saving my own. As I turned toward the exit, Mom's voice cracked behind me. Olivia, please. We can resolve this together. I paused at the doorway. I spent years fixing things that you broke. This time, you will fix it yourselves. Outside, the sky had turned the color of steel gray. I slowly walked down the steps. The cold air felt clean against my cheeks. Through the window, I could still see them. Mom crying, Dad packing, Chloe staring blankly. For the first time, I felt no guilt. I felt relief. 2 weeks later, Sarah called. The investigation is finished, she confirmed. The bank verified the forgery. Your name is totally clear. You are no longer responsible for any of their debt. For a second, I couldn't speak. Years of tension dissolved in that single breath. So it's genuinely over. Sarah's voice softened. Legally, yes. Emotionally, that is entirely up to you. After I hung up, I stood by my apartment window, watching the city lights shimmer over the water. I reflected on everything I had lost while attempting to earn their affection, and how letting go was probably the only path to achieving peace. That night, I opened a special bottle of wine. I poured a glass and toasted the skyline. To new beginnings, to endings, and to a silence that finally brought peace. The news arrived quietly through an online property listing. The Providence house, the one I had once rescued from foreclosure, was listed for sale. There was on the screen the peeling porch, the coffee-stained walls, a photo of the dining room where the family had collapsed. A red tag at the bottom read, "For sale." I felt no triumph, only the sense of inevitability. When a life is built on the sacrifices of another, it eventually falls apart. A week later, Mom sent a message. One final dinner before we leave the house. Please come. I paused, then agreed. I went not out of obligation, but for final closure. When I arrived, the rooms were stripped bare, boxes were stacked everywhere, and the smell of dust had replaced the Sunday roast. My father seemed older, his voice softer. Chloe sat quietly, her phone facing down for once. We ate without small talk, without attempting to pretend. Afterward, I finally spoke. I am not cutting you all out of my life completely, I stated, but I will no longer act as your safety net. If you fail, you must pull yourselves back up. No one argued. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like conflict. It felt like acceptance. When I left, I paused at the doorway and looked back. The house that had contained so many years of resentment seemed suddenly small and fragile. Driving back to Boston, I lowered the window. The wind was cold, sharp, and purifying. I thought of all the space I had finally created for my own peace, my own savings, my own future. In the subsequent weeks, I focused on my job, accepted a promotion, and signed up for a night class I had postponed. My life was no longer divided between what they needed and what little remained for me. It was finally mine again. Sometimes I still reflect on that night, the cruel laughter, the silence, the clear boundary I finally established. For years, I believed love required sacrifice and that being the good daughter meant carrying everyone else's burden. But genuine love does not exhaust you. It does not demand your sanity as proof. Now when I sit in my Boston apartment and watch the sunset over the skyline, I feel calm, not bitter. I learned that saying no is not cruelty. It is self-respect. If you have ever been the one holding your family together while they were tearing you apart, I want to hear your story. Tell me where you are listening from and what boundary you had to draw for yourself. And if this narrative resonated with you, subscribe because there's more to come.